But interesting enough, with them, so I was Googling you because I think not Googling. I was on podcast, and I want to say it was probably 6 months ago or so because we reconnected when I got back into where I'm at now. And that's when I said, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And you're like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it. And I was like, all right, I want to listen to some of the stuff that he's been on. Well, I came across Mike and Ryan on their podcast, and I was like, whoa, these guys are from Glastonbury or West Hartford, whatever. And I reached out to Mike. I said, hey, Mike, do you want to come on my show? And Mike came on my show.
No
so
way.
Yeah, so we did an episode and we unpacked the real estate investment stuff, which is kind of cool. Just one, that was the first time I've ever stepped out of my comfort zone and being able to reach out to someone and say, hey. But with you, I'm very thankful that you came in and did this with me because I met you about a year ago.
Yes.
It was year to date about almost. It was at the end of February, and I was at that conference with, I think Pure was hosting it in Boston.
Yeah.
And your speaking portion of that event was, I mean, everybody there was like captivated on the message.
Thank you.
And I remember thinking because at this point the podcast hadn't even started. I haven't even started the podcast yet.
Oh, really?
No. I had just thought about, doing this. So I had all the equipment on its way and I didn't really know how to run the show or anything like that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to ask this guy if he would want to be on the podcast. The only reason why I did too, because I knew you were from Connecticut because you had mentioned, the Willimantic connection in Glastonbury. And I remember being very nervous asking you to come onto the show because again, I hadn't recorded a single episode yet. I just knew that I was gonna do something.
Worst thing I'm gonna say is no.
Yeah, right. So
I was like, absolutely.
you were.
Let's do it tomorrow.
You literally were very welcoming. So, Christos Provistalis, I appreciate you joining me today. Your message is awesome.
Thank you.
What do you sell ultimately? And I want to unpack. Obviously you have your classes, but I want to unpack you a little bit and really get to know you from a level that gets people to understand why you do what you do. And we kind of go in different directions. So the big thing, Christos, before we kind of go in that direction, just give for the people who are listening and tuning in, just like a quick Cliff Notes version of who you are, what you do, why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. My family and I have been in the hospitality business our whole life. I was born and raised in Queens, New York, and we moved to Connecticut in 91. Family bought a restaurant. That restaurant didn't work out the way it needed to. Opened up a brand new restaurant, and we ended up having that restaurant for 29 and a half years. In between, I ended up purchasing a liquor store right next door to our family pizzeria in the early 2000s. Sold that, and I always wanted to work in corporate America, and I always wanted to work for Disney, right? I'm obsessed with what makes them, their fans just crazy, right? Yeah. Crazy about the product, about their service. And so in 2008, I moved down to Florida, and I ended up working for them. It took me about a year and a half or so to become a leader for their organization, and I did, and it was the best experience I've had. I learned so much. I went into it being like, well, you know what? My family owns a restaurant. I know a lot about hospitality.
Yeah.
I know a lot. I went in there a week later. I was like, I don't know anything about hospitality. Right. It humbled me really fast, and I needed it. I needed it.
You answered a question that I was going to ask, like kind of like the icebreaker question, is that you always knew that you wanted to work for Disney. So is that something going back to when you were a kid? Like, you obviously you have the family business with your mom and dad, the pizzeria, which I believe, was it 2020 or 2021? You guys went through that like final four format, like kind of like the March Madness of pizza, and you guys finished third. But you as a family, you guys seem very family oriented. You guys love each other deeply. What do you remember most about what you thought you wanted to do when you were a kid and growing up, and how that all shaped out?
How did I want to do when I was? I don't know. When I grew up in New York City, I always wanted to do some type of speaking. I know I enjoy speaking, right? Maybe some stand-up or just teaching or something, or just talking. I just really enjoy it. I've been told that I talk a lot, just it is what it is. But when I started getting obsessed with Disney in my 20s, and just seeing, because every time you go down there, you hear about them. There's thousands of blogs and websites that are dedicated to the Disney fans that are not even created by Disney. I wanted to know what their formula was, right? And I became obsessed with it. So I ended up going down, spent about 6 years working for them, and then I ended up coming back up, and my youngest brother took over our family business from my parents, and I asked him if I could assist him in running the operation. We did, and yeah.
So with Disney, one of the biggest things I remember from your keynote speaking was, what do you sell, right? As an insurance professional, we sell the peace of mind, right? And that's huge to be able to identify that emotion and being able to create that. One thing I've learned over this last, I would say probably year, and it was probably right around this time that I had met you. The takeaway came after, but people don't care about what you do for them. They care about how you make them feel. And that was something that I'm 35, and I've been in sales, and I've enjoyed sales for better half of my life. I started at 18 years old. I worked at Best Buy, and I worked at all different retail, and here I am now in the insurance space. But it's not something that really clicked in my mind until I heard it. Actually, Ed Milet, he has a podcast, and then you said it. Going to Disney, working at Disney, I'm assuming that's not something you knew right away. Maybe a little bit because of your family business and everything that you've done. But as you're going through your first couple years there, when was it that clicked that for you, it's about the person, not about what really me. It's not about me as the product or the products that I offer.
I'll tell you exactly when, which was the premise of my talk called "What Do You Sell?" I was working at a 24-hour quick service restaurant called Gasparilla's Island Grill at the Grand Floridian, and our operations manager for food and beverage came in one evening, and he said, "Christos, let me ask you a question." He goes, "What do you sell?" And my first reaction is, I'm like, this guy's an idiot. He can't read the menu behind him. He made the menu. And I just started reading the menu items. He goes, "Christos, I can read the menu." He goes, "What do we sell as a company?" And I go, "Oh, we sell theme park tickets, hotel rooms, and merchandise." He goes, "It's not what we sell." Because that's what you think you sell. And he's like, "What does Nike sell?" And I said, "Sneakers." He goes, "It's not what they sell." "What does Rolex sell?" I go, "Watches." He goes, "It's not what they sell." And at this point, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, "Christos, Disney, Nike, Rolex, they all sell the same thing, but a different type." And I was like, the more you're talking, the more you're confusing me.
Yeah.
He goes, "Christos, I asked you what Nike sells. You told me sneakers. Nike sells motivation and inspiration through their sneakers. Rolex, if you watch a commercial, you watch a well-dressed person coming out of an expensive car. They sell status and success through their watches." But he said, "We're lucky. We're really lucky. We sell the most desired human emotion there is. We sell the emotion of happiness. Is the only thing we sell.
Right.
But you think we sell theme park tickets and hotel rooms." And that's the day that made me, it really changed the way I think, and it really changed my life. And I said, huh. And he goes, the most effective businesses, as small as a mom and pop to as big as Disney, have to understand what they actually sell. And when you don't understand what you sell, your job is to evoke the emotion you want your customer to feel. And he goes, that's your job. And I worked that business unit so differently after that conversation because I knew and understood what we actually sold. So, and that was the premise for my talk, and knowing and understanding when I do this talk for, other companies, some companies focus really on the product and service, but I tell them you need to focus on how that product or service makes someone feel, right? And like you said, and you're in the insurance space, You sell a sense of safety and security through your policies.
Right.
But you can't focus on the policies. You have to focus on how your verbiage, how you're going to make somebody feel from what you tell them.
One of the things you also said during your speaking when we were in Boston was most people, I think you asked us, like, how many of you are self-aware? And I think everybody probably put their hands up. And if and maybe you can kind of unpack this because this was a year ago now, but the idea that we are not as self-aware as we think we are. And I'm a person of reflection. I like to reflect on pretty much anything. Like after this show, when we're done, I'm going to think about, man, I should have said this or I shouldn't have said that, or what could I have done better in my life, in my relationship, in work? What can I do better in my hobbies? How can I get better at it? I'm a deep thinker on trying to do that. One can say that that's self-reflection, or it can, I'm aware of the things that I'm good at or not. But someone else could say, like, no, those are, you're not as aware as some of the biggest things. When you say that we're not as self-aware, what does that actually mean?
Aware of how our feelings and emotions and our actions interact with the environment around us. Mm-hmm. I think there was a study that I read somewhere about 85% of people think they're self-aware, when somewhere around 90% of people are actually not self-aware. They have no idea how they come across. Now, at the end of the day, somebody close to that person should have a conversation with them and let them know, someone in my late 20s, I'm 47 now, someone in my late 20s sat down with me and said, Christos, I just want you to know, you talk a lot and you take over every conversation, you interrupt, and it was news to me.
Right.
I didn't talk to that person for a couple of years, but that was on me. I couldn't handle that.
Yeah, it was more ego, right?
Yeah, of course it was. Plus was blindsided. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I knew I liked to talk, but I had no idea about those things. Later on, I was like, I appreciate you saying that to me. I was too immature to accept that feedback. I didn't know. And that made me go, oh my goodness, Christos. So every time, it's been 20 years now, every time I have a conversation, whether it's personal or professional, I always let the other person talk first and ask them what's going on. They have to talk first because I take over the conversation.
Yeah.
And I continue to. I would like to think less. I would like I say, I used to be president of the interruption club. Now, I became vice president, and then hopefully I'm like treasurer. Yeah. But someone has to tell you. Right. And as soon as I found that out, I'll ask the people around me the closest, hey, if I come across a certain way, please let me know. Like, you're going to be doing me a disservice if you don't.
What do you think is the driver of us not being as self-aware, especially in a day where people aren't afraid to bite their tongues, right? When people are, like you said, 20 years ago, somebody said this to you. That probably was happening every so often. Now people are very not eager, but people will criticize pretty bluntly these days. Mm-hmm. But I still don't know if that corrects the self-awareness. And I also think that we have these like habitual patterns of just not being able to stop doing certain things, very much like you just described. I too, I love hearing myself speak. That's why I have a podcast. Like I love it. I do. I really do.
That's great.
I enjoy hearing myself speak. But it takes work to really read the room, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. And know that you can't be speaking in certain situations, and that's hard to identify. But what do you think that like root cause is why we are the way we are, where we think we are self-aware, but we're actually not?
That's a really good question. Because I think if nobody tells us, we're assuming everything is okay, the way we come across, the things we say. And it's tough to know, right? 'Cause I feel this way, I'm going to act this way, right? I'm going to talk this way. And if nobody corrects you, you're like, oh, I guess everything's okay. So I think that's really tough to answer. And when someone... especially if someone's close to you, right? I think the closer someone is to you, the more you'll pay attention to, right? If it's someone that you don't know and you don't care for, says it, you wonder, is it coming from a place of, ill intent? or if it's coming from a place of caring, right?
Right.
If it's coming from a place of caring, I think then you're like, oh my goodness, this is one of my closest people. They saying this to me. It has to be true.
Yeah.
But if it's someone that you don't know said it, of course you're still gonna think about it. You're like, this guy said this, but I don't, they don't hold any, merit with me.
Sure. I wonder if it's just more of like also just our inability to, like with social media, I think really hurts too, because I feel like the day of social media or the days, I mean, we're talking decades now of social media. I grew up with MySpace and AIM and all that stuff, and being able to communicate the way we did virtually, I think that maybe broke the communication a little bit. And
Maybe.
you can, with like text messaging and stuff like that, you can't really read emotion in text messaging, or I mean you can, but sometimes it can be misread.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if this like day of just how digital and virtual everything is, if that's maybe created this unawareness of self. And it just, like I said, I'm a deep thinker. These are things that I just always think about, because it's something I think the ultimate place that I'd like to be as a person is to be able to communicate really well.
Okay.
And what I love about your classes, and maybe we could talk a little bit about, because you have several different classes that you do, or is it just like, what do you sell? Is it really just that?
What do you sell is my keynote
Your
that I
keynote,
do, and
yeah.
then I have a speaker class that I do for like aspiring speakers that are for the mechanics of speaking.
Yeah.
I have a couple students that I assist in helping them just to be able to get their message across and make their message alive.
Yeah.
Those are the main two things that I'm working on. A couple other things,
Sure,
but
sure.
those are the main two things that I do.
When going back to that instance at Disney, what with the executive, was there a moment that you were able to, or what moment were you able to adapt now that principle of it's about them, not me or us? Is there a moment that you can remember, like a story that you remember that you applied that, and then all of a
absolutely.
sudden, like,
So many.
that's when it clicked?
After that day, I just, every time I worked, I just ran their business different. I knew that we didn't necessarily sell Mickey waffles. I knew that we sold happiness through our Mickey waffles.
Yeah.
So I paid attention to how somebody received our products and our services. So I would do different things instead of spending time focusing on the food, and I had to let the people that were in charge there do that. And I just was with the people, right? I would go and I'd spend time with the kids, with the adults, just talking to them, getting to know them, asking them questions. And one of my favorite things that I would do is right outside Gasparilla's. If you walk outside there, you could see Cinderella's castle right across the water. And every night at 9:00, the fireworks go off. And if they don't go off, there's a company-wide email that goes out to everybody that says, hey, fireworks are not going off. Just want to let you know. But if you don't hear from them, it's assumed they're going off at 9. And about probably 60 to 80 people would gather every night around there. These are customers of ours from the Grand Floridian that are spending a lot of money to stay there, that are looking for the fireworks and not wanting to get into the theme park. So back then we had a phone called a BlackBerry, which had
I remember the BlackBerry.
Yeah.
The BBMs, yeah.
With the Nextel feature, so it'd be a little.
Walkie-talkie.
And so I had that, and around 8:55 or so, I'd go outside and I would I'd find a 6 to 7 year old little boy or girl, and I'd be like, who wants to help me put off the fireworks tonight? So I'd find a little boy or girl. I would talk to them for a minute, and at Disney, when they said when you talk to children, you actually have to go to their height. So I'd have to go all the way on the ground and talk to them so we're eye level. They said never talk to them down like this, always be at their level. So I'd go down, I'd talk to them, and I'd be like, okay, what's your name? And let's just say they'd be like, my name is Michael. Hey, Michael, okay. Hey, Disney Fireworks, Magic Kingdom Fireworks. I'm here with Michael, and Michael's going to help put off the fireworks tonight. And they'd be like, sounds good, we're ready to go. And around 8:59 and 50 seconds, I'd have the whole crowd, 60 to 80 people, counting down from 10. And as soon as you said 1, I'd have little Michael press the button, you hear, and all the fireworks would go off. what that would do for
That's
those
amazing.
60 to 80 people,
Hmm.
I can't, like, I'm getting goosebumps
I
talking
was
about
just
it.
thinking about it just now because
Like,
like, sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
that's fine.
First time I ever been to Disney was I had just graduated college and I went for a few days. I was seeing a girl at the time, and we went. She was like, "Oh, we're going down there," and I'm like, "Oh, let's go." First time ever going. And what you're describing, the light show that happens on the castle and the fireworks and all that stuff. I remember just being like, I felt like a little kid. That emotion of happiness was there, and so I didn't mean to cut you off, but you saying that, I can feel that like same emotion of happiness, and that's something that little kid Michael, will remember for the rest of his life.
And the parents afterwards would come up to me, they'd hug me, they'd kiss me, they'd try to tip me, they'd be like, thank you so much, and thank you, even though I didn't choose their kid, they're like, thank you. And I wouldn't understand. I was like, really, that effect? And minimal to no effort on my end, right?
Yeah.
I just know and understand what we sold,
Right.
right? We sold a sense of happiness through our fireworks,
Right.
through our everything. And every single thing that I did moving forward after that, I just focused on how I made them feel.
Yeah. So, with just even that, anything that you want to do, anything you want to accomplish in life, work related, what you're doing with your keynote speaking, your classes, especially when you were thinking one way of product versus now people, it requires a mindset shift. Obviously, we know what your mindset shift was, and you were like, oh, I can't, like, I get it now. But that's still hard for like the average person. And I'll just use my industry, or the industry that I'm in. We have a lot of people that come in and out. The turnover rate is really difficult. And I always wonder if it's just the inability to channel a mindset of what you're doing without giving too much of, your
Sure.
your course and what you teach. Is there one thing that you can maybe throw out there and say, this is the biggest thing you need to adapt when it comes to mindset?
Well, I think whatever company you work for, you have to know and understand what they sell. I think that's the biggest thing, is really what they sell. Mm-hmm. You could tell you I sell this widget, but I'm like, that's fine. But the company needs to be able to really be detailed and articulate to be able to know what emotion that does,
Sure.
and to be able to tell their company and tell everyone that works there. But if the company doesn't know it, it's hard for them to bring it down to anyone. At the end of the day, there's every single person, right? One of the 6 human needs we have is the need to feel significant, right? Every single person in this world, in every situation, has the need to feel significant. Now, every time I say this when I'm speaking, I always look at the crowd, and I always see someone be like, I don't need to feel significant, right? And significance broken down into four areas. You either need to feel special, important, unique, or needed in every single situation in your life. So when you know and understand that it's actually a human need, it's not just something that's out there, right? We need this, right? You need to feel special, or you need to feel important. So when you're selling to somebody, right, you have to make sure that they understand, right? And on top of that, before you even go to that, how do you connect with them?
Right.
How do you connect with them? You have to emotionally connect with them.
Yeah.
And if you don't emotionally connect with them, it doesn't matter what you end up selling, right? They're not going to be paying attention. You have to find a way to be able to really connect with them. And when you connect with them, then it's a lot easier for them to listen to you.
Yeah, what's interesting? I read the book and I've read it. It's up there, and I probably open it 3 or 4 times a year. How to Win Friends and Influence Others. And
An amazing book.
When I first read the book, and the biggest takeaway from that book is you got to speak in the terms of other people's interests to get them to know you, like you, and trust you. Like you said, you want to be a listener, not a speaker. And forever, for like the first year that I had that book, I read it. I'm like, man, I don't grasp that concept. But I really applied it still to my daily life. And I find myself now in just engaging in conversation with people is I'm trying to uncover things that are about them and not talking about myself. And in the business that I'm in, it's, you really have to talk and, you know, try to get to know people, but it's very easy, like we were talking about earlier, just to be the dominant voice in the room or the dominant voice on the phone. So it took a lot of time to really get to that idea that I need to relax, take a step back. I need to relax and take a step back and let that person open up. I think your work kind of goes hand in hand with that. And you also talked about some body language stuff, and like you can, that's one thing I'm terrible at. Like my body language, and, you know, sometimes I'll be sitting on the couch, you know, with my wife and we're hanging out watching a show, and, you know, I don't mean to come off closed or anything like that, but it's amazing how much this stuff matters, and maybe body language more than just language in itself. Am I wrong in that estimation that body language is as big of a role in the communication piece and being able to talk to someone with that kind of level of emotion?
And when you said, you're like, oh my God, I'm bad at it. Everyone is, because it's, it happens involuntary.
Yeah.
Right. We can't control it. It's tough to, it's really tough to, 55% of our communication as human beings is body language. There's something called the 7-38-55 rule of communication. And when I learned this, I was like, no, this can't be accurate. They say that 7% of our communication as human beings is verbal. 38% of our communication as human beings is tone and pitch of our voice. And 55% of our communication is body language. Our body reacts, right? It doesn't think, it only acts.
Yeah.
Right? And then afterwards you're like, oh, you know, because it's one step ahead. It just reacts and acts.
Right.
So knowing that 38% of our communication is tone and pitch, and if you're talking to someone on the phone, that 55% is gone.
Yeah, right.
So the 7%, sure, those words count, but are you talking like this? Hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to help you. Or be like, hi, what's going on? Excellent.
Yeah.
And as soon as I was taught that, I went, oh my goodness. I never thought that our voice was that much. I couldn't believe, and then I was like, wow. So then I'm very careful about it. I try to be very conscious on that, because even if I feel like I'm going to have a tough conversation, I have to make sure that I'm very aware.
Right. That's huge too. And there's another thing I was going to say, but that's huge too. Understanding that in all of this, you do have to understand that you are going to have tough conversations. And it sounds like that framework that you've created allows you to put yourself in a position to have these without avoidance. And I mean, I think people don't like tough conversations just because the uncomfortable nature, but sometimes the best things happen from uncomfortable conversations. One of the things that I learned from you that I, again, didn't adopt probably until like a week ago, it feels like, is, you know, you mentioned something about texting, and you're like, you know, you can just open your phone, you can just text somebody. Like, I don't really like texting everybody like that. I mean, I do. I text because obviously we have to text, work, whatever. But then you mentioned voice to text, and I was like, yes, brilliant. So I've been voice to texting, and it's just, it just adds a level of personal like touch, because the phones are great in identifying the tone and all that stuff. You know, it's still, you know, can be misread and whatnot, but that's just another key concept that I think that people could leverage in their business and pretty much everyday life.
Texts and emails all lack emotion. Unless I'm telling you, hey, Paul, just want to let you know you just won $1 million. Right. You pretty much know that that's a really happy and positive thing. Right. But if you're just having a conversation, you don't know how it is. You don't know how to take it. So I tell people, if you're going to text, why don't you just send a voice message? Yeah, right. Because if you take those words, those 30, 40 words, and just write them opposed to send them a voice text, it's dramatically different. Yeah. And you know, I tell some people, if you're doing a call, instead of doing a regular call, do a Zoom call or do a Teams call, so they can see you, and they can just, you know, feel your energy. But you have to have that energy, right? You don't want it to backfire on you because you're like this, and you're on like that. So but do that, right? People need to feel heard and seen, right?
I did for the first time ever. I would say last year, maybe in May or something, I did not May, probably March. I did a presentation through Zoom, and it went fabulous. And I like to take pride. I'm pretty good on phones and talking to people over the phones. That just haven't. I'm 10 years in the industry, but it is amazing that we have a tool that's not utilized. The Zooms, from a presentation standpoint, I think people would appreciate that for sure. I want to go through your family business, what you learned from that, the pizzeria, the 30 years, right?
Sure.
That you guys were there. You said earlier you worked there in high school a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, number 3 during that. What year was that, by the way? The March Madness pizza.
What year was it that happened? I think it might have been 22.
22, just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple years ago.
That happened. And so, yeah, I worked there all through high school. I worked there through college. And that's when I, purchased another business. Then I ended up leaving. And then, a few years later, I ended up coming back. My youngest brother, Dimitri, took over our family business. And he was gracious enough to be like, hey, listen, I'd love for you to focus on this, this, and this while I focus on the other things. He's a chef. He's an operations person. He's very talented, and I can't do the things he does.
Yeah.
And I could never run our family business by myself because it's just not for me. So I really was like, hey, you know what? Like, let's just really understand our customers, our employees. And the biggest thing we did is we knew and understand that without our employees, we really tried to make sure that they felt seen and heard. Because at the end of the day, our employees run our business. I can't tell you that my brother and I ran our business, right? There's 2 of us. And my mom and my dad, we had at one point 20 employees, right? They really run the business.
Sure.
So making sure that they feel seen and heard is, paramount. And then after that, making sure our customers feel significant.
Right.
They don't need to come to our restaurant.
Right.
They don't have to. And one of the biggest things that I learned while being there is that we sold a sense of family is what we sold through our pizza. I think our pizza is good, right? Obviously, it's a biased opinion, but there's 1,000 other pizzerias that are great. But what did we really sell? People want to be called by their name. People want to be asked how their life is. People want to. You hopefully remember the last time you had a conversation with them that they have a daughter and a son and they're played this sport and they're having a conversation, or you just take their food and walk them out to their car, or if they just had a baby, you call them up and through social media, people post things all the time. Be like, hey, listen, I just saw you had a baby. I'd love to meet you at your house with some food for the next couple of days for you. How's what? Like it's really simple, really, really simple. They just have to feel. They need to feel significant, just like you and I want to feel significant. And and when you have customers like that, your customers become your sales team, and they just tell everyone about your business because they feel a certain way.
It sounds like your family had a sense of pride in people.
Absolutely. In our community, we try to be involved in as many organizations as we possibly could be. As many organizations we can have our hand in to either donate food or donate, some time for us to spend there, or because at the end of the day, without our community, we're a space with restaurant equipment and a phone that doesn't ring.
Right.
So we needed to make sure that we gave as much as we could back to our community and different organizations, and we try to get involved in everyone's lives.
Yeah.
We did. We really tried to get involved in everyone's life. I would reach out to a lot of people when anything would happen and be like, is there anything we can do for you? Is there, somebody would get into a fender bender. If I'd say I'd call them up, I'd be like, come by. We'd love to buy you a couple pizzas tonight. They're like, we're fine. They're like, nothing happened. I go, you posted about it. I'm like, I figured something. I'm like, just come by. You don't have to figure out. And they'd be like, that's so great of you. I'm like, thank you, but it's really nothing on our end, right? We thought of them. We thought of them. What a nice gesture, right? If you were to do that, all of a sudden the place that you go to calls you and said, we'd love, you feel a certain way.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great your product or service is. I know some people might say, it almost has nothing to do with your product or service, right? It's how you make somebody feel.
I agree. And I'll just say it from a perspective of the landscape of the industry right now. There's a ton of us. There's my agency, there's that agency, there's this agency. People will turn down a better price to do business with me because of how I treat them. And that's something that I take really, like, I'm so proud of that. Like, I think I have like 167 or 68 5-star reviews on Google. And
wow.
I really enjoy being able to just connect with the person and have them know who I am. Hey, listen, this is who I am. I have a family. This is where I grew up. I grew up in New London. I have 2 kids, one on the way. Like, break down that barrier a little bit and then get to know them. And I think that is something that is a skill that is learned. And I think that when I was mentioning what I think with other younger people is that they don't believe that they can learn that kind of skill. They see a seasoned reps that are been doing this or agents that have been doing this. And they're like, oh man, how does that person do it? But it takes time. Like, your first keynote speaking was probably completely different than what it is today. And just anything you want to get good at comes with repetition. You shared a story, and I want listeners to hear this story, because I think that out of anything that was really profound on your speaking session, and this idea of making people feel good, and that's all what people care about. They don't care about what you do or what you've done for them. They care about how you made them feel. Was how you guys ran your, like you said, the business from maybe like a personal touch standpoint. And if someone in the community had passed away, you guys would really like look out for these people, food, what can we do for them? What can we do to help you? You guys put them first, and you basically put your kind of business in the back pocket, because nothing mattered when it came to the person and the preciousness of life. You guys valued. You shared something where in turn they did that to you guys. Do you mind sharing that story?
Sure. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the impact we really had until it was reciprocated. I didn't realize, because at the end of the day, we're just cooking pasta and making pizza and bringing it to someone's house, and it on our end, it's like really nothing, right? It's nothing. Right. And 3 years ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly, and we had to close our restaurant, and so we could regroup and figure life out and figure things out. And the amount of people that reached out and brought food to our house and brought soft drinks and cards and gifts, and that's when I really went, is this how they feel? Mm-hmm. And it really hit me. I didn't know how it felt. I just was like, I'm just dropping this off. And they were emotional. They'd hug me. They'd kiss me. They'd be like, thank you. I'd be like, that's great. And when it happened to me and to us and to our family, I went, this is why we're so successful. Mm-hmm. Wow. Like, the feeling was, and that's when I was like, wow, Mom, I'm like, I guess we do really sell a sense of family through mm-hmm. our people just were dropping things off for us. Some people don't even have much would be like, here's a little something I'd like. And it's just, the gesture made us feel amazing. It made us feel really special. Yeah. Really special. And I guess I needed to feel that to understand the impact that we had. Right. And so that was a profound moment, mm-hmm. To know that I'm like, and to understand, wow, this is how they actually feel. It's everything in this world. And it goes back to your training and everything that you learned from Disney, obviously. And but I actually believe that
you had that, you guys had that, and you had that already in you prior to even just going to Disney. It just had to be unlocked, right?
Correct. I remember my mom saying this to me. I have 2 younger brothers, and I remember her saying to me, I have 4 children.
Mm.
You, Nico, Dimitri, and our restaurant. I take care of the restaurant and its customers and employees in the same fashion that I take care of each of you.
Mm.
And, you know, she just say that, and I'm like, nah, whatever.
Yeah.
I was younger. I was like, I don't know what that means.
Whatever,
You know, whatever.
Okay, Mom. Yeah.
And then I realized later on, you're right, Mom. Like, and she took care of it just like that. And everyone that came in, you know, people call her Mom, and people are like coming around the counter, be like, oh, can I give you a hug? I miss you. This, thank you for everything. Thank you. You know, and she and my dad had a profound impact. And then later on, when I went to Disney, it made me understand what she was like trying to convey. Like you said, it unlocked, and I was like, oh my goodness. It just put things together.
Yeah.
It gave me perspective, and it was amazing. It was great.
So I've never had. I might have. I mean, I used to do some business in Willimantic, at Charter Oak, right there on the main street. Where were you guys in relation to there?
We're on Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street. So I have never. You guys are Greek, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've never had obviously your pizza, but there's a place, Basra Pizza, right up the road. There's a couple of the Greek pizzerias around here, and the difference in the culture of going into that kind of pizzeria versus, and this is not a shot to any pizzeria, but it's very much that. Like I observe, and I'm going in, and you have your regulars at the counter sitting there talking to the owners, and it's just like there's a sense of home when it comes to these pizzerias, and it sounds like that's what you guys had.
Yeah, we realized that without any customers coming in, we had just an empty space, and they don't have to come to it. We don't sell anything that people need, right? People need to eat food, but there's 1,000 places they could go and get it. So every single person that would come in, whether they bought $1 soda to a $1,000 catering order, they don't have to come there, right? They're not an inconvenience to you, right? Sure. They're the reason that you're there, right? So really understanding and making sure that they feel the love, right? And whatever way they interpret that, because not everyone wants to feel it. They just want to thank you, and that's fine. Yeah. And other people want you to talk to them for 20 minutes. Yeah. And you have to give them what they're looking for.
Yeah. Sounds like a little therapeutic too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't know how you can, brighten up someone's day. You have no idea. Right. We as people have no idea how a gesture of a dessert, a gesture of words can make someone's day. We have no idea.
Do you miss it?
There's a part of me, absolutely. After we sold, the day we sold our restaurant, it was, it was tough. That I'm like, oh my goodness, what do we do? But I'm like, this was a plan. We meant to do this. But I definitely miss serving our customers, having a great time with our employees. I definitely miss it. And hospitality will always be in my heart. Yeah.
So we got about 10 minutes or so. I got some couple questions, and then I got some like fun questions that I just want to ask you. Sure. If that's okay. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what are you working on now? Like, what are some things? What are some goals for you? What are some things you have to remind yourself? Like, because it's easy to, when we get comfortable with who we are and where we are with things, it's easy to just run on autopilot. So very much like we were talking about earlier, that you need to kind of be intentional about certain conversations and understanding certain emotions, because it's easy to we are automatically just running, right? With you, what are some things that you have to remind yourself, and then what are you working on top of that?
I constantly have to remind myself that everyone that hires me to speak for them, they don't have to. They could choose someone else to come in, and it's a really, really big deal that they do. It affects me and my family dramatically for them hiring me, and I appreciate it more than I can probably properly express. And I have to know, at someday that might end,
Yeah.
right? So I have to really appreciate that. And what I'm working on is, I am very fortunate. Through speaking, I met a great gentleman named Chris Paradiso, and he gave me a great opportunity to assist him in his business, and while simultaneously speaking.
Wow.
I'm still able to speak and go and travel the country and work at his business.
I think it's so crazy how the world works, Christos, because I, again, someone who's always trying to reflect, how do I get better? What can I learn? I go to podcasts. Not only do I listen, not only do I have mine, but I go and listen to different types of podcasts, whether it be business, politics, insurance, faith. I always, that's all I do. And I came across Chris, probably, I want to say a year or two ago. And I had reached out to him because he was on the insurance, I think, insurance podcast. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So I reached out to him and said, hey, Chris, like to pick your brain about the industry, and we're supposed to meet, but I just think it's crazy how the world works, on how now full circle I have you on my show, and this you know him, you've known him, you've spoken at his engagements. What's the largest crowd you've spoken in front of?
The largest group I've done was about 600.
Wow.
600.
Do you get nervous when you get up there?
Each and every time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I care. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
In front of 600 people.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure I know and understand why they're there. I have to make sure I articulate my message.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure that I put it in relatable terms as to how they can use the information I'm saying. I just can't just go out and talk.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely nervous when I speak. It's just natural because I don't have to be there, right? They don't have to hire me,
right.
and it's a really big deal that they do.
Yeah.
It means the world to me. So there's always going to be that piece of and it shows that you care, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you weren't nervous, you'd be like
Right.
No, each and every time.
And do you when it comes to like those speaking engagements, are you like looking at people's reactions to things, like what are you like? And the only reason why I asked too, because I actually I don't want to say it's an endeavor, but when I was younger, I used to do a little bit of youth ministry, and I would be asked to open up a service, or I would ask to close a service, or have us do a sermon. In college, I would kind of do the same thing in like a group setting, and there'd be like 30, 40 people like there, and I just really felt like it was something that I was called to do. But even in the industry now, like I've asked to do presentations. When I first started, I don't do them anymore because that's just not the market for me. But I used to do like driving classes, teen driving class. I used to go do like a 10, 15 minutes spot. What I've learned now, it's about storytelling, not about people don't really care about that, like boring stuff of insurance, like your liability, this and that. It's telling stories. So early on in my career, I would say, this is what you need to look out for, and this and that. And I would look at somebody and I'm like, okay, they're not receiving it at all. They're on their phone. They do not care. And it's easy to shut down. How are you able, because I'm sure you kind of get similar emotions inside.
Sure.
What do you do like to pivot from that?
Well, when speaking, people will remember things in a story format. I think it's 20 times more than if you're just spewing out facts.
Yeah.
So, and plus it's interesting, and you have to be able to be an effective storyteller. So one of the things I teach in my speaker class that I have is you have to know how to speak, right? You have to, there's certain things that you do and there's certain things that you say to warrant a certain reaction because it makes somebody feel a certain way. Like when you make, let's just say, for example, when you make someone laugh, endorphins kick in, right? And when that happens, they become a little bit more focused on you. And as much as they're relaxed because they're laughing, but they're like, I want more of it because it feels good, right? Why do people go to see comedy shows?
Yeah.
Because they want to feel good.
Right.
So if you can do a couple things that make them, oh my goodness, feel something, that they're going to pay attention to you. So storytelling is, if you're able to nail storytelling, that's I would say probably 70%, 75% of speaking.
Yeah, I'm doing a seminar in 2 weeks. First time I've done a speaking arrangement like this in a while, and that was my first thing I remembered. It's like, what can I learn from the previous times where I'm just spitting facts and numbers and people don't really care about it? It's like, how can I transition this where it's educational but it's still a storytelling element? So, couple things that I want to, just some fun stuff that I jotted down here, and I'll kind of leave the floor to you.
Okay.
So let's see. I'm
nervous.
Yeah, here. Let's see what we got here. I'll use this in a different way. So if you can have dinner with any historical leader to talk about business, who would that be, and why? And why?
Historical leader.
Yeah.
Historical leader.
To talk about business, or any business leader. It doesn't have to be a historical leader. It could be like any entrepreneur leader,
Present or past?
Present or past, yeah.
Who would I love to have a conversation with? I'd love to have a conversation with Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
I watch Shark Tank a lot.
Yeah.
I love listening to him and learning from him. He always has different angles, and I love how sometimes you'll have four of the other sharks saying one thing, and then he has a complete different view of things. And I would love to learn how he thinks, right, and how he looks at things. He's a big risk taker.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs that have really made it. You have to take a risk. You have to execute.
Yeah.
But I just find him so interesting, and I know as of late too that he recently did something with like pharmaceuticals, like how he was able to start a drug company to offer so many drugs at like a portion of the cost.
Right.
And that just made me love him.
Yeah.
For him doing that, be like, thank you for doing that, something like that. So,
Yeah.
but he would be someone that I would love to sit down and talk. Can you arrange that for me?
That's a good. Hey, listen, maybe one day. I have my people call their people.
That would be great.
What is a common phrase in business that you think is completely overrated?
A phrase in business that's completely overrated. What do people say all the time that I think...
We can skip that one too if you want. It's a tricky question.
It is a tricky question, but I could tell you this. I think in certain situations, there's sometimes when you ask somebody that, be like, well, you know what? It's not really a big deal. And it's not a big deal. And I hear that a lot. Well, it's a big deal because they mentioned it.
Right.
So you have to, it is a big deal. So if you're going to use that word, it's not a big deal, make sure that you communicate why. Right? I hear that all the time.
Right.
But I never hear the
That's
why.
Good. That's good.
Right? Because they're still be like, oh, it's not a big deal. You told me, I guess I have to trust you. And that's where the know, like, and trust comes.
Right.
If I trust you and you say that, okay, but explain the why.
Yeah.
Why do you think? Because I think it's a big deal.
Right.
Educate me. So.
And last one here. If there was a movie about your journey, what would the name be?
If there was a movie about my journey, what would it be called? Throw in some zingers, huh?
Yeah.
Oh. What would it be called? I don't know. Like, I'm obsessed with the customer experience. I'm obsessed with service. I really am. I think it would be having something to do with service. What am I gonna call it?
You know what's interesting? I feel like Christos Speaks that could be a good movie title.
Yeah, I mean that's the name of my website. But Christos Speaks. Christos doesn't stop speaking. I don't know. Like if you talk to some of my friends. I don't know, man. I'm going to have to get back to you.
Listen.
I'm going to have to get back to you. I don't know what it would be called.
Yeah, shoot me a text later and let me know what you think about that. But yeah, before we let you go, anything that you want to maybe throw in that we didn't cover? I know we kind of spent a lot of time on the Disney experience and then your family experience. I think all of that is really important in general as people. The biggest message I think is getting to, and this is kind of me summarizing, obviously knowing you and going off of this conversation, is getting to a point where we're putting people first and let aside our egos when it comes to dealing in any exchange. I don't think that this is necessarily something that is just about work related. I think this is kind of just general life skills and being able to communicate. So is there anything else that you want to throw in there? Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave you with this. At the end of the day, when we focus on customer experience, it's how do you connect, right? And what's the definition of human connection? The definition of human connection is it's an energy that's formed between people when they feel seen, heard, valued, and understood, right? And when they feel those things, they connect. Whether you know it, don't know it, can admit it, can't admit it, you have to be able to connect with them. Right? And you have to figure that piece out. And I think knowing and understanding what industry you're in and what emotion you sell behind your product or service. Because when you know that and you're able to connect, I feel like you become unstoppable.
Yeah.
You really can become unstoppable. And so if anybody is interested in contacting me, my website is christospeaks.com. And yeah, you can just fill out a form there and I'll get right back to you.
I appreciate it, Christos. This was great. Thank you very much.
This was really great.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, bro. Thanks.